Hi, everybody. My name is Lesguerra. Just a little bit of background on me. I am half Filipino, half white. My dad is a immigrant from the Philippines, and my mom was born here in the United States. And looking back at the racial identity development theory that we were introducing in Model Drill 2 is a Filipino American one. I can definitely relate to one bullet point as in the assimilation issue. I never assimilated to the Filipino culture and the Filipino race in general. It is mostly because um, I am half white and I didn't really get along with some of my cousins, aunts, and uncles because it was definitely not fully Filipino. And that is a thing in the past. Obviously, it's changed a little bit more in 2024. It's more of a, um, yeah, everybody's Filipino some way or another, mixed or not. There's a lot of mixed kids these days. Um, so, with my racial identity development, I definitely don't relate to the white side of my identity. I definitely have had an experience where it formulated in my brain of like I don't want to associate with my white side of the family is because of a situation that happened with the grandfather of mine, my grandfather on my mom's side, who was blatantly racist and deemed me as a half breed person and pretty much minimized my existence in total as they refused to be in the same car as me or the same vicinity as me because of my half Filipino, half American status. So that really guided me into like, I don't want to associate with anybody from my mother's side and anything to do with the white side of my family because they just, it, yeah, no, it's racism through and through. Um, but who really influenced me in my culture and my identity and race and the Filipino whole part of me is my grandmother on my dad's side. She definitely introduced us to different um, ways that we can show the culture of the Philippines is like through food, through culture events, through family closeness, tight knit close family. Everything is surrounding the family and religion. Religion really played a huge part because most of the Philippines is Catholic and partial is like Christian or Muslim. But religion played a huge part in growing up. So when we're talking about institutionalized racism and experiencing it, there was one time where um, my sister and I were brought to the grocery store by my dad, and my dad worked for the post office for 29 years as a mail carrier for the United States Postal Service, and he was out in the sun all the time. So he gets sunburned, he gets darker. So there was this time where we were in the grocery store and he brought us there and people were questioning my father whether or not we were his children because obviously we're white and then he's a darker skin tone. So they weren't consoling us when we were crying. They were asking us if he was our father or he was our is he biologically are we biologically his? So those questions were just like, if it was my dad and he was a different skin tone, obviously the questions would be different. They'd be like, oh, is he okay? Are the big kids okay? But absolutely not. It was the complete and total opposite. It was a lot of like assuming that we weren't my dad's kids and there was no relation that he was kidnapping us and all this stuff and it got out of hand pretty quickly. But don't remember really the ending of it, of like, was it ever resolved or anything like that. So can't really tell you about that. Um, so in comparison to what age I was at that time, I compared it to the Erickson's initiative versus guilt stage at age 3. It's not necessarily feeling guilt about what had happened because I had absolutely no control over it, but I felt guilty in the way of like, you know, things like this shouldn't happen to my dad. But also, I was like, I don't know, as a 3-year old, how do I, there's no way for me to like, you know, guide that conversation away from racism and stuff. So, with that, I felt a lot of like, why didn't I speak up? Why didn't, a lot of whys and questioning. But it also forced me to realize that there is a great divide when it comes to skin tone and judgment and passing judgment to people and biases and unconscious bias and things like that. So, yeah. So, in the now, what I would have done in that situation if I was older is obviously speak up against it. And if it does happen again um, in my timeline, in my lifetime, if it does happen again, I would speak up against it, and I wouldn't jump the crowd of like, oh, like he's kidnapping, it's like everybody assumes and judges just because based on like what it is, but they don't really answer the right questions or ask the right questions about like, how can we help you? Like, is everything okay? It's more like, well, you know, the other way around. But now that we're educated and we have all the tools that we have that we can guide conversations and help other people, I think I would go that route rather than just being a bystander and, partaking in the bystander effect. So I hope this answers everything that, we're talking about. And I am looking forward to viewing everybody's videos. Have a good night.